I was 25 years old when my mother stood up at my birthday party, clinked her champagne glass, and announced to 60 of our closest friends and family that I was adopted, and that she'd only done it for the tax benefits. The room went silent. Someone's fork clattered against a plate. I stood there, frozen, holding a slice of the birthday cake I'd watched Torch fuss over that morning, the one she'd insisted on baking herself, because that's what mothers do. The cake suddenly felt like lead in my hands. "I think everyone should know the truth," she said, her voice carrying across the restaurant's private dining room we'd rented. Her face was flushed with wine and something else, something that looked almost like pleasure. "Emma isn't really my daughter. We took her in when she was 6 because, well, the tax deductions were incredible, and the monthly stipend from the state even better." I watched my boyfriend Alex's face drain of color. My best friend Maya grabbed my arm, but I couldn't feel it. I was numb, floating somewhere above my body, watching this scene unfold like it was happening to someone else. The worst part? She was smiling. Let me take you back so you understand why this moment shattered me so completely. I have no memories before the age of 6. The social workers told me it was trauma. My biological parents had died in a car accident, and my brain had simply locked those years away to protect me. Sarah Winters, the woman I'd called Mom for 19 years, had seemed like a miracle when she appeared in the foster home. "I've always wanted a daughter," she'd told me, kneeling down to my level, her perfectly manicured hands gentle on my shoulders. "Would you like to come home with me?" I'd cried into her cashmere sweater and nodded, unable to believe that someone so elegant, so polished, so perfect wanted me. Growing up, Sarah wasn't warm exactly, but I'd convinced myself that was just her personality. She was a successful real estate developer, always impeccably dressed, always busy. Our house was a showplace in the best neighborhood, a Victorian mansion with a pool, a library, gardens that required 3 groundskeepers. She sent me to private schools, bought me designer clothes, and made sure I had piano lessons and writing lessons and every opportunity. I told myself I was lucky. I told myself that love looked different for different people. When she forgot my birthday one year, I told myself she was busy with work. When she didn't come to my high school graduation because of a property deal, I told myself that's what it meant to be independent and strong. I worked hard to make her proud. I got into Northwestern, majored in architecture like she'd suggested, graduated summa cum laude. I came back to our hometown and took a position at a small firm, staying close because I thought that's what she wanted. I thought we were building towards something, a real mother-daughter relationship, the kind I saw other people have. Last month, she'd asked me to plan my own birthday party. "You're 25 now, darling, practically ancient. Let's do something big." She handed me her credit card with that cool smile of hers. "Invite everyone important. Make it memorable." I'd spent weeks planning and agonizing over every detail because I wanted her to be proud. I wanted to show her that I'd grown into someone worthy of the chance she'd given me. Standing there with cake in my hands while she announced I was a tax write-off, I finally understood. I'd never been her daughter. I'd been an investment. The party ended in chaos. People left in uncomfortable clusters, throwing me pitying looks. Alex drove me home, not to Sarah's house, but to his apartment. I sat on his couch in my birthday dress, mascara streaking down my face, and started to think. "This doesn't make sense," I said, my voice hoarse from crying. "Why would she say that? Why now?" Alex brought me tea I didn't drink. Maybe she was drunk. But Sarah never got sloppy drunk. She was too controlled for that. Over the next few days, little things started clicking into place. Memories I'd dismissed began forming a pattern. There was the time I was 12 and found Sarah in our home office, surrounded by paperwork. I'd asked what she was doing, and she'd snapped, "justifying expenses," before shooing me away. At the time, I thought she meant business expenses. There was the college fund she'd mentioned throughout my teenage years. When it came time to apply, she'd said it had been reallocated into a property investment that would benefit us both eventually. I'd taken out student loans instead, grateful she'd at least co-signed. There was the way she always referred to me in certain company, never "my daughter," but "Emma" or "the girl I took in." I'd thought she was just being professional, not wanting to mix her personal and business lives. There were photographs. Our house had hundreds of photos of Sarah at charity events, at property openings, accepting awards. There were maybe 10 photos of me total, and 8 of those were from official school events she'd been obligated to attend. I pulled out my adoption papers, something I rarely looked at. I'd been so happy to be adopted that I'd never examined them closely. Now I read every line. That's when I found it. A small notation, barely legible, referencing something called a special needs adoption tax credit. I wasn't special needs. I'd never been diagnosed with anything. I started researching, falling down a rabbit hole that lasted until 3 a.m. What I found made my blood run cold. Sarah had adopted me through a program designed for children who were considered harder to place. Older kids, kids with medical conditions, siblings who needed to stay together. The tax credits were substantial, designed to incentivize people to adopt children who might otherwise age out of the foster system. We're talking thousands per year, plus monthly stipends, plus education grants I'd never seen a penny of. But the real revelation came when I found Sarah's company records. They were public, filed with the state. I cross-referenced dates and found something that made me physically ill. Sarah had adopted me in September of 2006. In October of 2006, she'd purchased the Blackwell property, a massive commercial development that had made her millions. The down payment? Almost exactly the amount of the special needs adoption tax credit she would have received. I'd been seed money. I couldn't confront her half-cocked. I needed proof, real proof, because I knew Sarah would deny everything and make me look crazy. So I did what I'd learned from watching her all these years. I documented everything. I hired a forensic accountant, paying him with money I'd been saving for a wedding that might never happen now. His name was Robert Chen, and he'd helped expose financial fraud in 3 major divorce cases. I gave him everything: my adoption papers, Sarah's business filings, my social security number to track state payments. What he found was worse than I'd imagined. We met at a coffee shop, and he slid a folder across the table to me with the grim expression of a doctor delivering a terminal diagnosis. Miss Winters received approximately $47,000 in federal and state tax credits for your adoption, he said. She also received monthly stipends of $800 for your care until you turned 18. That's an additional $115,200. I did the math. $162,200. I thought of my student loans, $89,000. She could have paid for my entire education twice over with money designated for my care. There's more, Robert continued. The education grants. There were specific funds allocated for your college education, $35,000 released when you turned 17. Your mother received them. According to her tax returns, she declared them as income but claimed they went to a 529 education savings plan. The one that got reallocated? I whispered. That never existed, he corrected. There's no record of any such plan in your name. She spent that money. I can trace it to the renovation of her vacation property in Aspen. My hands were shaking. Can we prove this? We can prove she received the money. We can prove she claimed it for your benefit. We can prove she didn't spend it on you. Whether that's fraud depends on the specific language of the programs and the statute of limitations, but ethically, he leaned back, she stole from you. Money that was meant to give you a better life, she used to make herself richer. I sat there, staring at the folder. Nearly $200,000. Money meant to help a traumatized child thrive, to give me opportunities, to provide stability and love and care. She'd used me like a business loan. But the accountant wasn't finished. There's one more thing. I found correspondence between your mother and the adoption agency, emails. I had to work some contacts to get these, and well, you should read them yourself. He pulled out printed emails. The first was from Sarah to the agency director, dated 2 months before my adoption. I'm specifically interested in older children who qualify for maximum tax benefits. What are the credit amounts for ages 6 to 10 with trauma designations? My vision blurred. The agency director's response. Children aged 6 to 10 with documented trauma qualify for the highest tier. Current federal credit is $13,190 plus state matching. Sarah's reply. Perfect. Send me profiles fitting this description. I'd been shopping. She'd literally shopped for a child based on how much money I could generate. There were more emails. One where she complained that the mandatory parenting classes were eating into billable hours. One where she calculated the ROI of adoption versus charitable donations. One where she joked with a business associate that I was her best investment of 2006. I excused myself and threw up in the coffee shop bathroom. When I came back, Robert looked at me with genuine sympathy. He said quietly, I have daughters. If you want to pursue this legally, I'll help you. No additional charge. I took the folder, I thanked him, and I went home to plan. I didn't go back to Sarah's house. I couldn't. Alex had been amazing, giving me space and support in equal measure, but even he couldn't understand the depth of what I was feeling. It wasn't just anger, though there was plenty of that. It was grief. I was mourning a relationship that had never existed. Every memory I had was now tainted. Every "I love you" she'd said, and there hadn't been many, was a lie. Every sacrifice I'd made to earn her approval had been pointless because her approval was never available. You can't earn love from someone who sees you as a line item in a ledger. I was mourning my childhood. I'd spent 19 years trying to be good enough, perfect enough, accomplished enough to deserve the miracle of being chosen. Now I knew I'd never been chosen at all. I'd been selected, the way you select a stock or a property investment. I was mourning myself, the Emma who'd believed she was lucky, who'd been grateful for scraps of affection, who'd convinced herself that cold was just another word for dignified. Maya came over with wine and tissues. She'd been my best friend since 3rd grade, one of the few people who'd seen past Sarah's perfect facade. I always knew she was a bitch, Maya said, pouring us both generous glasses. But this? This is sociopathic. The worst part is I still love her, I admitted, hating myself for it. How messed up is that? She's never loved me, she's used me my entire life, and some pathetic part of me still wants her approval." "That's not pathetic," Maya said fiercely. "That's human. She's the only mother you remember. Of course you love her. That's what makes what she did so unforgivable." I cried for 3 days straight. I called in sick to work. I ignored Sarah's calls. She'd tried to reach me twice, both times leaving voicemails that didn't acknowledge what she'd said at the party, just asking when I was coming home to collect my things from the party. Alex suggested therapy, and he was right, but I wasn't ready yet. First, I needed to do something. I pulled out the folder Robert had given me and read through it again, this time looking for something specific. I found it in the adoption decree. There was a clause about inheritance. As an adopted child, I had the same legal rights as a biological child. Sarah had no other children, no siblings. Her parents were dead. According to the law, I was her heir. That's when the plan started forming. Sarah had taught me well. She'd taught me that everything was business, that sentiment was weakness, that the only thing that mattered was winning. Fine, I'd play by her rules, but I'd play better. I waited 2 weeks before I reached out to Sarah. I needed her to think she'd won, that her public humiliation of me had broken our relationship beyond repair. I needed her comfortable and confident. When I finally called, my voice was small, hurt. "Mom, can we talk?" She sighed, and I could hear the fake patience in her voice. "Emma, darling, I think we both said things at the party." "You were right," I interrupted, "about everything. I've been thinking, and you were right to tell everyone the truth. I should be grateful for what you gave me, not entitled to more." There was a pause. I could practically hear her recalculating. "Well, yes, I'm glad you understand. I do, and I want to make things right. I know I've been a financial burden. Now, I wouldn't say burden. No, I was. But I'm making good money now, and I want to start paying you back for everything. The schools, the lessons, the house expenses, all of it." Another pause, longer this time. "That's very mature of you, Emma. I was thinking we could have dinner, discuss a payment plan. I've been looking at my finances, and I think I can start with $2,000 a month." I could hear the smile in her voice. "Dinner sounds lovely. How about La Mer on Friday?" La Mer, the most expensive restaurant in the city. Of course. "Perfect. I'll make the reservation." I hung up and immediately called Robert Chen. "I need you to prepare a full financial analysis of Sarah's company. Everything. Debts, assets, vulnerabilities, and I need it by Friday." "What are you planning?" he asked. "I'm going to take everything she has," I said, "legally." Friday came. I dressed carefully, a conservative navy dress, pearl earrings, my hair pulled back. I looked like Sarah's protégé, which was exactly what I wanted. She was already seated when I arrived, a bottle of expensive wine already ordered. She looked radiant, victorious. She thought she'd won. "Emma," she said, kissing the air beside my cheek, "you look well." "Thank you." I sat down, placing my briefcase beside my chair. "How's work?" We made small talk through the appetizers. She talked about a new development, about market trends, about her latest acquisition. I nodded and smiled and asked intelligent questions, just like I'd done for years. Then, as the main course arrived, I opened my briefcase. "I brought something for you," I said, sliding a folder across the table. "The payment plan we discussed." She opened it, expecting to see a breakdown of monthly payments. Instead, she found copies of her emails to the adoption agency, the ones where she'd shopped for a child based on tax credits. Her face went white. "What is this?" "Keep reading," I said calmly, cutting into my steak. Underneath were the financial records Robert had compiled. bank statements showing the adoption credits and stipends, property records showing the purchases timed to my adoption, tax returns where she'd claimed education expenses she'd never paid, and underneath all of that, the final page, a letter from the IRS. "What have you done?" she whispered. "I filed a whistleblower complaint with the IRS," I said, taking a sip of wine. "Turns out, fraudulently claiming tax benefits is a serious crime. The education grants alone, claiming them as educational expenses when you spent them on your Aspen renovation, that's tax fraud. The statute of limitations is 6 years for civil cases, but for criminal fraud, that doesn't start until they discover it. You wouldn't. I already did. 3 days ago. That letter is a copy of their response. They're auditing you, going back 10 years. From what Robert calculated, between the fraudulent education expense claims and some other creative accounting you've done with your business, did you know mixing personal and business expenses the way you do is illegal? You're looking at around $400,000 in back taxes, penalties, and interest." Her hand was shaking. "I'm your mother." "No," I said, and my voice was ice. "You're the woman who bought me because I was profitable, and now it's time to settle accounts." I pulled out another document. "This is a lawsuit I'm filing on Monday. Civil fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, and emotional distress. The education grants alone, $35,000 that was legally designated for my benefit that you spent on yourself, that's just the start. I have documentation of every stipend, every credit, every penny you received for my care that you diverted to your own use. You can't prove I didn't spend that money on you. Actually, I can. Robert is very good at his job. We have your bank records, your property purchases, everything. We can show that in the year you received the education grant, your spending on me totaled less than $3,000. Private school tuition? You wrote that off as a business expense for tax purposes while simultaneously claiming the education grant. That's double dipping, Sarah. That's fraud." Her breathing was hard now, her perfect composure cracking. "Why are you doing this?" "Because you taught me that everything is business," I said. "You taught me that sentiment is weakness. You taught me that the only thing that matters is winning." I pulled out the final document and placed it in front of her. "This is an offer to settle," I said. "You transfer the deed to the Blackwell property, the one you bought with money from my adoption credit, into my name. You also pay me $150,000, representing the stipends and grants that should have been spent on my care and education. In exchange, I drop the civil lawsuit." "That property is worth millions." "I know. I also know that if the IRS audit finds what I think it will, you're going to need liquid assets to pay your penalties. You're going to need to sell properties. This way, you choose which one you lose. And $150,000, that's less than you stole from me, but I'm being generous because, as you like to remind me, you did provide a home." She stared at me with something I'd never seen before: fear. "The IRS investigation will proceed regardless," I continued. "That's out of my hands now. But the civil suit, that I can control. You have until Monday to decide. After that, I file, and this becomes public record. Every business associate you have, every social contact, everyone will know that Sarah Winters committed fraud against her own adopted daughter." I stood up, placed money on the table for my meal. "By the way," I added, "I've already spoken to the Charitable Foundation Board. You know, the one you chair, the one where you've given speeches about helping foster children. I sent them copies of your emails to the adoption agency. They're meeting Monday to discuss your position." I picked up my briefcase. "Have a good weekend, Sarah." I'll be at Alex if you need to reach me, with a settlement offer. I walked out of that restaurant with my head high, leaving her sitting there among the crystal and china, her perfect world crumbling around her. Sarah signed the settlement on Sunday night. She had her lawyer deliver it to Alex's apartment at 9 p.m., along with a check and the property deed. There was no note, no apology, nothing. Just the documents and a wire transfer confirmation for $150,000. I sat on Alex's couch, holding papers that represented my victory, and felt hollow. "Are you okay?" Alex asked, sitting beside me. "I don't know," I admitted. "I thought I'd feel better, triumphant or something." "You took down someone who hurt you. You made her face consequences. That's not nothing." "But she's still not sorry," I said. "She's just sorry she got caught." The IRS audit took 8 months. In the end, Sarah owed $437,000 in back taxes and penalties. She had to sell 2 properties and her Aspen vacation home to pay it. The charitable foundation removed her as chair, citing ethical concerns. 3 of her biggest clients dropped her when the news went public. I waited for her to call, to apologize, to say something that would acknowledge what she'd done. She never did. Instead, I got a letter from her lawyer 6 months after the settlement. It was formal, cold, and brief. Sarah Winters was voluntarily terminating her parental rights and requested that I not contact her further. I laughed when I read it. Then I cried. Then I laughed again. I used the settlement money to pay off my student loans. I put the rest in savings. The Blackwell property I held on to. It generates rental income of about $15,000 a month. I hired a property manager to handle it because I can't bring myself to be involved in the day-to-day. I started therapy. Dr. Rodriguez has helped me understand that what I'm grieving isn't just Sarah, but the mother I needed her to be, the one who never existed. I'm learning to mother myself, to give myself the compassion and care she never did. Some days are harder than others. Alex proposed 3 months ago. I said yes, but I also said I needed to wait before we set a date. He understood. He's been patient with me while I figure out who Emma is when she's not performing for someone's approval. Maya helped me clear out the last of my things from Sarah's house. We found boxes of my childhood artwork in the basement, never displayed, gathering dust. We found my report cards, all A's, filed away in a drawer. We found the Mother's Day cards I'd made her over the years, thrown in with old business correspondence. We also found a photo album I'd never seen before. It was my biological parents. Someone from the adoption agency must have given it to Sarah, and she'd never told me it existed. I stayed up all night looking at those pictures. My mother had my eyes. My father had my smile. They looked happy. They looked like they loved each other. And in the few photos where I appeared, a baby, a toddler, they looked at me like I was their whole world. I don't remember them, but I'm allowing myself to mourn them now too, to grieve what I lost at 6 years old and what I never got back. Last week, I drove past Sarah's house. There was a for sale sign on the lawn. I didn't stop. I'm building a new life now, one where my worth isn't measured in tax credits or return on investment. I'm learning to trust people can love me without an ulterior motive. I'm learning that I deserved better than what she gave me, and that her failure to love me was never about my worthiness. It was about her capacity. The Blackwell property? I've decided to donate it. There's a nonprofit that builds affordable housing for families transitioning out of foster care. They'll take ownership and use the rental income to fund their programs. Kids like I was, older, traumatized, hard to place, will have homes because of it. Sarah got to use me as an investment for 19 years. Now I get to turn her investment into something good. Sometimes people ask me if I regret what I did, if I regret exposing her, taking her property, destroying her reputation. I don't. She taught me that everything is business, that sentiment is weakness, that only winning matters. I just proved I learned the lesson better than she ever expected. And unlike her, I'm using my victory to help people instead of hurt them. That's the real revenge, not just beating her at her own game, but being better than she ever could be. I'm still Emma Winters, at least until the wedding. I think I might keep the name, not because of her, but because it's who I became despite her. It's who I built myself into when I had nothing but scraps to work with. And that Emma? She's stronger than Sarah ever gave her credit for. She's stronger than I ever gave myself credit for. And she's finally free.